Sometimes life changes in a way you never see coming, not in a loud, dramatic moment, but in a quiet breath. A morning when the sun rises the same way it always has, yet nothing feels the same anymore. My name is Patricia Walker, and 6 weeks ago, I lost my husband, Daniel. We were married for 43 years. 43 years of routines and habits. Even the little things, like the way he'd tap his fingers on the kitchen table, or warm my coffee mug before pouring in the coffee, they became part of the rhythm of my life. And then suddenly, the rhythm stopped. The house grew quiet in a way that felt too big for me. Empty chairs, cold pillows, his jacket still hanging behind the door, like he'd come right back and slip his arms through it. But he didn't. So, when the lawyer called and said Daniel left behind a final instruction, I assumed it would be something simple. A detail about paperwork, a note about a savings account, something practical. But instead, I found myself sitting in a dim office filled with old wood and the smell of dusty books. The kind of place where secrets float in the air and settle on the shelves. Mr. Yates, our family attorney, looked at me with a softness in his eyes that made me brace myself. "Patricia," he said quietly, "there is one more thing your husband left for you." He slid a small box across his desk. Inside it rested an old key tied with a faded blue ribbon. The ribbon looked hand-tied, the bow slightly crooked, just like Daniel used to tie things. My throat tightened as I touched it. It felt heavy. Not just the metal, but something else. Like it carried a story. Mr. Yates cleared his throat. "Your husband, he owned a property," he explained. "A house about 2 hours from here. He purchased it over 30 years ago and never told anyone except me. He instructed me to reveal it to you only after his passing." I stared at him. A house? Daniel had owned a house for more than 3 decades and never said a single word? "Why?" I whispered. The lawyer didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a sealed envelope. Daniel's handwriting on the front made my heart twist. "To Patricia, for when the time comes." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter, written in the strong, familiar strokes of the man I loved. "My dearest Patricia, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer by your side, and I'm sorry for the weight that places on your heart. There is something I've kept from you, not out of betrayal, but out of fear and shame, and the hope that one day I might tell you myself. I never found the courage, so I'm leaving you the truth now." I stopped reading. My eyes filled so fast I couldn't see the words anymore. Fear grew in the empty places of my chest. What truth? What had he carried alone? What had he hidden for all these years? I folded the letter, held it against my heart, and exhaled slowly, as if breathing would steady the world around me. Then Mr. Yates spoke again. "Patricia, Daniel wanted you to see the house. Alone." Alone. It felt like that word reached into my bones.
But I nodded, because even in death, I trusted Daniel. I trusted the man I loved, even if I didn't understand the path he was asking me to follow. Before we go any further, if you feel connected to stories of love, loss, and resilience, you're welcome to join our little community here. A simple like or subscribe helps this story reach someone who might need it today. The next morning, I packed a small overnight bag, even though I didn't know if I'd stay. Something inside me just said, be prepared. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was Daniel guiding me in his own quiet way. I placed the key with the blue ribbon inside my purse, right next to his letter. I touched it one more time before locking the door of my home, the home we had built together. The drive to the property was long, stretching through old country roads lined with tall pine trees and faded barns that looked like they'd seen better years. It reminded me of the kind of places Daniel and I used to drive through on Sunday afternoons when gas was cheap and life felt slow and simple. He'd roll the windows down and let the warm summer air fill the car, and I'd rest my hand on top of his as we passed open fields and quiet streams. But that day, the road felt different. The air felt heavier, almost like I was driving toward a moment that would change something inside me. After nearly 2 hours, I turned down a gravel path, barely held together by time and weather. An old mailbox sat crooked at the end of it, its paint peeling, the name unreadable. And then, there it was. The house. A 2-story white house with a wide front porch and tall shutters that were once green, but now had faded to something between moss and memory. The wood looked tired, like it had been standing guard over secrets for far too long. My heart beat slow and heavy. Each step from the car to the porch felt like walking through someone else's life. I placed my hand on the railing. It was cool, rough, and dusted with years of quiet. Wind moved through the trees, and for a moment, it sounded like whispers from a time I didn't belong to. The key trembled in my hand as I slid it into the lock. The metal turned stiffly, like it hadn't been opened by anyone in a long while. When the door finally creaked open, a faint scent drifted out. Old wood, cold air, and something else, something familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I stepped inside. The living room was dim, but everything was surprisingly clean. Not like a place abandoned, but like someone had cared for it quietly, without leaving signs of themselves. Furniture covered neatly with sheets, curtains drawn, blocking the morning sun, a clock on the wall, long stopped, its hands frozen at a time I didn't recognize. As I walked further in, my footsteps echoed softly, a lonely sound in a lonely place. There were no pictures on the walls, no signs of a family, no laughter or warmth left behind in the corners, just silence, and a strange sense that Daniel had stood in this same room many times before he ever told me it existed. Something pulled me toward the staircase. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear, maybe the truth waiting upstairs. The hallway on the second floor was narrow and dim, with worn floorboards that groaned softly under my feet. Halfway down the hall, I noticed a door that was slightly cracked open, like someone had left it that way on purpose. Inside the room, dust floated in the slant of light sneaking through the curtains. A wooden desk sat against the wall, and on top of it, almost too perfectly placed, was a small box. An old wooden box with a metal latch, and the initials AW carved faintly into the lid. My breath caught in my chest. AW. Not Daniel Walker, not my initials, someone else. With a slow hand, I opened the box. Inside was a worn leather diary, a stack of old letters, a silver locket tied with a faded thread, and a photograph, a young woman holding a baby boy. The woman's eyes were soft and tired, the kind of eyes that had loved deeply and lost deeply. The baby had Daniel's smile. My hands shook as I lifted the diary. On the first page, written in delicate handwriting, was a name, Anna Whitmore, and beneath it, a date from more than 30 years ago. My knees felt weak. My heart pounded. Whatever truth lived in this diary was about to change everything I thought I knew about my husband. And with trembling fingers, I turned to the next page. I held Anna Whitmore's diary in my hands like it was something fragile, a piece of another woman's heart that had somehow found its way into the quiet room of a house I never knew existed. The leather cover was worn, edges softened by time and tears. It felt lived in, loved in, suffered in. I opened to the first entry, and the handwriting, slanted and gentle, pulled me right into her world. June 11th, 1978. I met him today. His name is Daniel. Daniel. My Daniel. Only he was younger then, a version of himself I had never seen. I took a slow breath and kept reading. He smiled at me in that shy way men do when they're trying not to stare. We talked for hours. He told me he'd never met anyone who made him feel this comfortable. Comfortable. I whispered the word under my breath, thinking of all the times I had seen that same shy smile during our life together. My heart tightened. As I turned the page, the tone of the diary shifted, more tender, more serious. Daniel says he wants to marry me one day. He says he wants a home, a family, a life we build together. It was strange, reading the dreams of a woman who lived decades before me, a woman who wanted the same things I eventually shared with him, a woman he had loved before he ever knew my name. I kept reading. I'm late. I haven't told him yet. I don't know how he'll react. I'm scared, but I'm also hopeful. I closed my eyes, already fearing what was coming next. And I was right. I told Daniel I'm pregnant. He froze. He kept running his hands through his hair, saying he needed time to think. I told him I didn't need money, just his support. But he left my apartment without saying goodbye. My stomach twisted. I felt a sadness for Anna. Not jealousy, just sadness. And a quiet ache for Daniel. A younger, frightened Daniel I had never known. I turned the page. It's been 2 weeks. He hasn't come back. His parents came instead. They told me to stay away from him. They said I would ruin his future. His parents. I never met them. Daniel always said they died before I came into his life. I kept reading, my hands trembling slightly. Our son was born today. I named him Samuel. I wish Daniel could see his face. He has his father's eyes. But Daniel hasn't tried to reach me. A child! Daniel had a child! I felt the edges of the room blur, my eyes stinging. I tried to breathe, slow and steady, but the words on the page kept pulling me deeper into a life Daniel had abandoned. I read on. Our son is 3 months old. I wrote Daniel a letter. His mother returned it, unopened. I wrote again. This time, she tore it up in front of me. Daniel's parents! I had never known how controlling they were. He never spoke of them, not once. Maybe because their cruelty haunted him. The next entry was stained with something, a drop of water, maybe a tear? I'm so tired. Samuel is sick. The doctor says he needs more care than I can afford. I pray Daniel will come this time. I pray he will walk through the door and see his son. This part felt heavy, too heavy. But I kept reading. Samuel isn't getting better. I wrote Daniel again. I don't know if he'll ever read my words, but I had to try. I'm scared. I don't know how to do this alone. She was alone, truly alone. I turned the page, and my heart nearly stopped. If anything happens to me, and if Daniel ever finds this diary, I hope he forgives himself. I never hated him. I only wish he knew how much our son looked like him. I closed the diary slowly. My hands had gone numb. Anna, her baby boy, their entire story was written in heartbreak. And Daniel, the man I knew for 43 years, had carried this pain all alone. All those quiet moments, the nights he stared out the window, the times he held my hand a little tighter than usual. Maybe he wasn't just loving me. Maybe he was trying to make up for a past he wished he could undo. I wiped my eyes, then opened the diary again to continue, when suddenly I heard footsteps creaking on the porch downstairs. I wasn't alone anymore. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't tell if the sound was real or just my mind playing tricks on me after reading all that heartbreak. But then, another creak. A slow, steady one. Someone was walking on the porch. I set Anna's diary down gently, my fingers still trembling from the weight of everything I had just read. Daniel, what did you bring me into? I stepped out of the room slowly, each floorboard giving a soft protest beneath me. By the time I reached the top of the stairs, I could see a shadow stretching across the living room floor. Not a large shadow, thin, slightly hunched, moving carefully. I held my breath as the front door pushed open with a soft creak. A man stepped inside. Old, mid to late 70s maybe, wearing a brown jacket faded by sun and time, a weathered cap pulled low, hands rough like he'd worked with wood or land his entire life. He stopped the moment he spotted me on the stairs. For a moment, we only stared at each other, two strangers in a house that belonged to neither of us, but carried the history of someone we both knew. Then he spoke. You must be Patricia. Hearing my name from a stranger sent a cold ripple down my spine. Do I know you? He shook his head. No, ma'am, but I knew your husband. My heart clenched. He stepped inside a little further and removed his cap out of respect, like men from older generations often do. Name's Lyle. I live down the road a bit. Daniel used to stop by here from time to time. A pain flickered through me. So Daniel had come here. Alone. Quietly. Carrying memories he never shared with me. I walked down the stairs slowly and met him in the living room. "How long have you known about this place?" He let out a long breath, the kind that carries years inside it. "Long enough. I knew Anna. I knew about the boy, too." The words hit me like a soft but steady blow. He looked at me with eyes full of sympathy, the kind of sympathy only a person who's witnessed sorrow could hold. Why didn't Daniel ever tell me? Mr. Lyle lowered himself slowly onto a chair, as if the memories weighed more than his old bones. He was young, scared, and when he finally grew older and understood the weight of it, he carried that guilt like a stone in his pocket till the day he died. He looked around the house like the walls themselves were listening. He came back here years later, found the house empty, found out what happened. Lord, I never saw a grown man break the way he did that day. I closed my eyes, feeling tears pressing behind them. Daniel had cried here. He had mourned here. He had tried to make peace here, all without me. He should have told me. He wanted to. But sometimes men hide the worst parts of themselves from the people they love the most. He looked at me again, soft sympathy in his gaze. "He loved you, Mrs. Walker. Don't ever mistake his silence for a lack of love." Before I could respond, the crunch of gravel outside cut through the quiet. Another car. Another door slam. Mr. Lyle frowned and turned toward the porch. I felt my stomach drop as footsteps hurried toward the house, sharp, confident steps. The door swung open without so much as a knock. A woman stepped inside, tall, 40-something, sharp eyes, impatient posture. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. "Mom, what on earth are you doing here?" My heart stopped. Daniel Walker. Daniel's daughter from his first marriage. She looked around the house with suspicion and annoyance, like she already decided she didn't like what she was seeing. "So, this is the secret place Dad bought? Interesting." Her tone carried something I didn't like, a mix of entitlement and something darker. She stepped closer, eyes narrow. "Whatever Dad left in this house, I want it. And I won't let you walk off with something that should belong to his real family." Mr. Lyle stood up slowly, frowning deeply. I felt the room close in around me. The weight of Anna's diary upstairs, the truth I had just discovered, and now this new storm standing right in front of me. And in that moment, I realized the past wasn't done with me yet, not even close. Laura's words still echoed through the room like a door slamming inside my chest. Dad's real family. She said it so easily, so coldly, as if 43 years of marriage were nothing but a footnote in Daniel's story. I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength. Instead, I walked away from her, back toward the narrow staircase, my heart pounding with a mix of hurt and anger. Mr. Lyle whispered, "I'll wait down here if you need anything, Patricia." I nodded weakly and climbed the stairs again, feeling years older with every step. Upstairs, the room felt colder than before. Anna's diary was still open on the floor, a painful doorway into a life Daniel once lived and lost. But beside the diary, something else caught my eye. A small wooden stand that I somehow hadn't noticed earlier. On top of it rested a black USB drive and a folded note with Daniel's handwriting. My breath caught. I sat down slowly and opened the note. To the wrong people, I believed the wrong things, and I broke a young woman's heart in a way I never forgave myself for. His eyes lowered, the shame almost visible on the screen. I didn't go back. I didn't check on her. Patricia. When I came back years later, ready to apologize, ready to try to fix what I had ruined, Anna was gone, and the boy, my little boy, was gone too. He paused, swallowing hard. That day, Patricia, I collapsed on this very floor. I cried until my chest hurt, until my voice was gone, until I felt like the worst man alive. The screen shook slightly, as if Daniel had placed the camera down with trembling hands. I bought the house so I could keep a part of them with me, not to hide a secret life, but because I couldn't let go of the one I destroyed. He wiped his eyes. But then I met you. His voice warmed, cracked with emotion. You saved me. You loved me without knowing how broken I was. You rebuilt a man who didn't think he'd deserve a second chance. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying not to cry out loud. I didn't want to burden you with a past that wasn't yours. I was ashamed, and I was afraid you'd look at me differently. He looked into the camera, right at me. Please know this. I never loved you with a divided heart. You were my peace. You were my forgiveness even before I told you what I needed forgiving for. His voice softened to a whisper. If you choose to leave this house behind, I'll understand. That if you choose to stay, if you choose to learn the whole truth, there is a sealed envelope waiting for you. It holds the final piece of why I kept this place all these years. The screen faded to black. I leaned forward, hands covering my face, and let the grief spill out of me. All the hurt, all the confusion, all the love. Daniel, the man I shared my life with, had carried so much pain alone. And sitting on the table beside his old recording was the sealed envelope he spoke of. I reached for it, my fingers shaking. If this moment touched your heart, you can share your thoughts in the comments. It truly helps others feel less alone in their own journeys. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, you're welcome to subscribe. It means a lot. Daniel's videos still lingered in the room. His voice, his regret, his love, all woven into a confession 40 years in the making. And now, the sealed envelope sat in my lap, like the final door between the man I thought I knew and the man he truly was. My fingers shook as I broke the seal. Inside, there were two things: a smaller key, silver and old, and a folded letter written in Daniel's familiar hand. I opened it carefully. Patricia, if you're opening this, then you've watched the recording and you know the truth I carried. There is one more place in this house I could never bring myself to open again. The small key unlocks it. You don't have to go in, only if your heart feels steady enough to face what I left there. Inside that room is everything I never told you, but everything you deserve to know. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Okay, Daniel, I'll see it through. I stood up, my legs still shaky, and looked around the second floor. Every door was familiar now, except for one. A narrow attic door, almost hidden in the corner, painted the same color as the wall, as if someone wanted it to blend in. I walked toward it slowly, listening to the soft creak of the floor under my feet. The key slid into the old lock, turned stiffly, and clicked. The sound echoed faintly through the quiet hallway. I pushed the door open. Dust floated through the thin sliver of sunlight as I stepped inside. The air was cooler here, still, like a moment frozen in time. And then I saw them. Paintings. Dozens of paintings leaning against the attic walls. I walked closer, my heart swelling with each step.
The first canvas showed Anna, younger, smiling, her eyes full of gentle hope. The second showed Samuel, a little boy with soft curls, and Daniel's unmistakable smile. My hand lifted to my mouth as I tried to hold back a sob. Oh, Daniel! I moved to the next painting, and this one brought me to my knees. It was me, not young me, not the beginning of our marriage me, but me as I am now, lines on my face, gray in my hair, a softness earned through years of loving and losing and living. It was a painting of the woman he came home to, the woman he grew old beside, the woman who held the pieces of his heart after life had broken it. I reached out and touched the edge of the canvas with shaking fingers. Behind the paintings, I noticed something else, a wooden chest. I opened it gently. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, all addressed to me. Letters he wrote through the years, but never gave me. Letters he wrote after every anniversary, every birthday, every night he sat awake thinking about the past. I pulled one out and unfolded it.
Patricia, today is our 10th anniversary. You smiled at me this morning in that way that makes me believe God gives us second chances through people like you. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve this life. But every day, I try to be the man you think I am. Tears blurred the words until I could barely see the ink. I sat on the dusty attic floor, holding the letter tightly, feeling the truth settle gently into the cracks of my heart. Daniel wasn't hiding a secret life. He was hiding a broken history, a wound he never healed, a grief he never let go of. And in loving me, he found pieces of the forgiveness he couldn't give himself. Downstairs, I heard footsteps again, lighter this time, more hesitant. Laura. Her voice echoed up the stairs, not sharp now, but shaky. Patricia, are you okay? I wiped my eyes and called back softly. I'm upstairs, Laura. Come here. A moment later, she stepped into the attic and froze. Her eyes widened as she saw the paintings, the letters, the pieces of her father's hidden heart. Her face crumpled. I didn't know. I didn't know any of this. She covered her mouth, fighting tears. I thought you were keeping something from me. I thought he loved you more. I shook my head gently. Laura, your father loved you. He carried a lot of pain long before we met. None of this was ever about choosing between us. She blinked rapidly, tears slipping down. I'm sorry, she whispered. I stepped toward her and placed a trembling hand on her arm. We're both grieving, sweetheart. Let's not do it alone. Laura nodded and leaned into me, crying softly, a child who had finally found the truth. And for the first time since I set foot in that house, I felt something shift, a small, fragile beginning of healing. Laura and I sat together in that attic for a long time, longer than either of us planned. Two women, broken in different ways by the same man's sorrow, finally seeing each other without anger between us. She brushed her fingers against a painting of Anna, tracing the soft lines of her smile. I always thought Dad didn't tell me things because he didn't care, but he carried too much. I nodded gently. He wasn't protecting himself, Laura. he was protecting everyone else. She wiped her eyes, and for the first time since she walked in that house, her shoulders softened, the sharp corners of her personality melting into something human, something wounded, something real. We went downstairs together, holding on to the railing like we were learning how to balance again. The living room felt different now, not as cold, not as secretive. Almost like opening that attic door let the house breathe again. Mr. Lyle stood from the chair when he saw us. His old eyes softened. "You two all right?" I nodded. "We will be." He gave a slow, approving nod, the kind older men give when they've seen enough life to know what healing looks like. When they left, I stayed a little longer, walking through each room slowly, touching the walls, the windowsills, the doorknobs. Every corner of that house held a memory that didn't belong to me. But somehow, strangely, they welcomed me. Like I had been invited into the quiet truth of a life lived in pieces. I stepped out onto the porch and sat on the old wooden swing, its chains creaking softly as I pushed it back and forth. The sky above the trees was turning gold, the kind of sunset that makes the whole world feel warm for a moment. I held Anna's diary in my lap and Samuel's little locket in my hand. "You can rest now," I murmured. "All of you. Your story isn't hidden anymore." A breeze moved gently across the porch, lifting the edge of the ribbon on the locket, as if someone, somewhere, had heard me. I decided then what I would do with the house. I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't lock it away. I wouldn't leave it to gather dust and ghosts. Instead, I would restore it. I would paint the walls again, open the windows, let light come back in. And when it was ready, I would turn it into something Anna would be proud of. A place for young mothers who needed support. A place for women who felt lost or alone, the way she once did. A place where broken stories could breathe again. A place of hope. I'd name it the Whitmore Home. A tribute to Anna, to Samuel, to Daniel, and to the woman I had become through all of this. As I watched the sun dip low, warm light settling over the porch, I felt something inside me ease, like a knot, slowly coming undone. And for the first time since Daniel passed, I didn't feel alone. I felt connected, not just to him, but to the truth of who he was, the whole truth, even the broken parts. Life is strange that way. It hands us people who come with their own storms, their own histories, their own shadows, and sometimes loving them means loving the echoes of their past, even when we never heard them before. I stood up from the swing, held the locket gently, and whispered into the quiet evening air, "Daniel, I understand now, and I forgive you." The trees swayed softly, as if answering. I closed the door of the old house behind me, not to shut it away, but to begin again. For Anna, for Samuel, for Daniel, and for me. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from the answers we wished for. It comes from the truth we were finally brave enough to face. And in that truth, we find our way back home. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story stayed with you, you can like, comment, or subscribe so you never miss the next one. Your presence here means more than you know.